Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Facts channel. I'm so glad you found your way here. Maybe you had a long day, or maybe you're the kind of person who likes falling asleep to ocean mysteries rather than counting sheep. Either way, tonight's journey is for you. Let your mind relax, your breathing slow, and your body grow light as foam dissolving into waves. Because tonight, we're exploring sea turtles, those ancient mariners who have traveled the world's oceans since before the dinosaurs walked the earth. We'll drift from their tranquil migrations to their quiet nesting rituals, discovering how these gentle creatures navigate thousands of miles and return to the very beaches where they were born. Some of what you hear tonight may surprise you, or at least spark curiosity as you drift off. Before we begin, if this helps you unwind, consider liking and subscribing, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, let's begin. Sea turtles have existed for more than 100 million years, swimming through ancient seas when dinosaurs still roamed the continents, surviving mass extinctions that eliminated countless other species from the planet. These reptiles witnessed the rise and fall of entire ecosystems, adapting slowly to changing oceans, while maintaining the same basic body plan that served their ancestors so well. Their lineage stretches back through geological epochs, connecting the present moment to a world almost unimaginable in its difference from our own. The sea turtle swimming past a coral reef today carries within its genes the memory of seas that no human has ever witnessed. Oceans, warmer or colder, coastlines, positioned in configurations long since transformed by continental drift. They are living fossils in the most poetic sense, creatures that bridge the deep past and the uncertain future, reminding us that survival sometimes means changing very little over very long periods of time. The largest sea turtle is the leatherback, which can weigh up to 2,000 pounds and measure over 6 feet in length from head to tail, making it not just the largest turtle but one of the largest reptiles currently alive on Earth. These enormous animals move through the water with surprising grace despite their bulk, their bodies streamlined by evolution into shapes that slip through currents with minimal resistance. A leatherback gliding through deep ocean waters appears weightless, suspended in the blue darkness, like a shadow passing beneath the surface, its great flippers beating in slow rhythm that propels it forward on journeys spanning entire ocean basins. The size of these creatures speaks to the abundance of their food source, the countless jellyfish that drift through the water column, and to the absence of significant predators once they reach adulthood. To encounter a leatherback in the open ocean is to witness a giant moving with the gentleness that often accompanies great size, a being that has no need to rush, no reason to fear, simply existing in the medium that has held its kind for longer than mountains have stood. Sea turtles spend almost their entire lives in the ocean, never coming to shore except when females return to beaches to lay their eggs, a journey they undertake only a few times each decade. The ocean is their true home, the element in which they feed and rest and mate, where they travel distances that would exhaust creatures bound to land. Male sea turtles, once they leave the beach where they hatched, may never touch sand again throughout their entire lives, which can span many decades. They are creatures of liquid space, navigating a three-dimensional world without roads or landmarks in any conventional sense, following currents and magnetic fields and perhaps memories inherited or learned, moving through water the way birds move through air. The ocean holds them in its embrace, supporting their weight, allowing them to glide and dive and surface in rhythms dictated by their need for air and food and rest. When you imagine a sea turtle, imagine it always in motion through blue water, always surrounded by the gentle pressure of the sea, always distant from the solid world that seems so essential to land-dwelling creatures like ourselves. The shell of a sea turtle is not separate from its body but is actually part of its skeleton, with the ribs and spine fused to the bony plates that form the protective carapace on top and the plastron underneath. This means the shell is living tissue, containing blood vessels and nerves, capable of feeling pressure and temperature and pain. The shell grows with the turtle, slowly expanding as the animal matures, each section called a scute thickening and spreading in patterns unique to each individual. You cannot remove a turtle from its shell any more than you could remove a human from their ribcage, the shell being as integral to the turtle's structure as bones are to mammals. The fusion of skeleton and shell creates a body plan. Unlike almost anything else in nature, a fortress that is also a framework, protection that is also foundation. When a sea turtle swims, its entire body flexes slightly with each stroke of its flippers, the shell curving and returning in minute degrees, a living armor that moves because it is alive, not despite it. The shell's surface, often covered in algae and small crustaceans, becomes a traveling ecosystem, a mobile surface that other creatures colonize, making each turtle a world unto itself. Sea turtles navigate across vast ocean distances using the Earth's magnetic field, detecting subtle variations in magnetic intensity and angle that create a map readable only to creatures with the proper sensory equipment. Scientists believe sea turtles imprint on the magnetic signature of their birth beach, remembering that particular combination of magnetic coordinates and using it decades later to return to the same stretch of coastline where they first entered the ocean. This magnetic sense allows juvenile turtles to navigate ocean currents, staying within favorable feeding areas and avoiding waters too cold or too dangerous. The mechanism by which they detect magnetic fields remains somewhat mysterious, though researchers suspect special cells containing magnetic crystals exist somewhere in the turtle's brain, perhaps near the regions that process other navigational information. This invisible map, this network of magnetic lines that humans cannot perceive without instruments, guides turtles on migrations spanning thousands of miles, bringing them home after years at sea, with accuracy that seems impossible, yet happens with remarkable regularity. They read the Earth itself, interpreting signals written in invisible ink, following paths drawn in forces we know exist but cannot feel, trusting senses we can barely imagine to carry them across trackless waters to specific destinations. The flippers of sea turtles are modified limbs, evolved from the legs of terrestrial ancestors into paddle-like appendages perfectly suited for swimming but nearly useless on land. The front flippers are longer and more powerful than the rear ones, providing most of the propulsion as the turtle flies through water in motions that resemble the wing beats of birds. These flippers cannot be retracted into the shell like the limbs of terrestrial turtles, being too large and too specialized for anything but aquatic locomotion. On the rare occasions when female turtles come ashore to nest, they drag themselves laboriously up beaches using these flippers like oars in sand, expending enormous effort to climb beyond the high tide line. The contrast between their grace in water and their struggle on land emphasizes how completely they have adapted to marine life, sacrificing terrestrial mobility for aquatic excellence. The flippers themselves are covered in scales and sometimes barnacles, and their bones show the ghostly structure of fingers and arm bones stretched and flattened, a reminder that these animals descend from creatures that once walked on four legs across ancient landscapes, now vanished beneath stone and time. Sea turtles must surface to breathe air, being reptiles despite their aquatic lifestyle, rising to the surface at intervals that depend on their activity level and the surrounding water temperature. A resting turtle can hold its breath for several hours, its metabolism slowing in the way of reptiles, its heart rate dropping to conserve oxygen. An active turtle, swimming strongly or fleeing from danger, must breathe more frequently, perhaps every few minutes, breaking the surface just long enough to exhale and inhale before diving again. They sleep underwater, often wedging themselves under coral ledges or rock overhangs, where they can rest protected from currents and predators, surfacing periodically, even while sleeping, to breathe in what appears to be an automatic reflex. This dual existence, belonging fully to neither air nor water, gives sea turtles a kind of liminality, a sense of existing between worlds, connected to both, but completely contained by neither. When a turtle surfaces, water streams from its shell and head, and for a moment it exists at the boundary between two elements, breathing the same air that fills human lungs, before descending again into the blue silence, where most of its life unfolds. The diet of sea turtles varies by species, with some eating primarily jellyfish, others grazing on seagrass and algae, and still others hunting crabs and mollusks with jaws strong enough to crush shells. Green sea turtles, named for the color of their fat rather than their shells, are primarily herbivorous as adults, spending their days grazing in seagrass meadows like underwater cattle, maintaining the health of these ecosystems through their constant feeding. Hawksbill turtles eat sponges, organisms toxic to most other animals, accumulating poisons in their own flesh that make them dangerous to eat. A defense acquired through diet rather than evolution. Loggerhead turtles have powerful jaws that crack open hard-shelled prey, feeding on conchs and horseshoe crabs and other armored invertebrates. The act of feeding is slow and methodical, turtles taking their time, chewing carefully or tearing at vegetation with serrated jaw edges, processing food with the patience that characterizes all their activities. They are not efficient eaters in the sense that mammals are, but they persist, consuming steadily, building energy stores slowly, living at a pace that seems almost meditative in its deliberateness. The ocean provides, and they take what they need without haste, without excess, embodying a kind of sufficiency that seems foreign to the endless hunger of warm-blooded metabolism. Sea turtles have excellent vision underwater, but are quite nearsighted in air. Their eyes adapted for seeing clearly in the refractive medium of seawater rather than the thinner atmosphere. This means that when they surface or come ashore, the world appears blurred and indistinct, perhaps adding to their vulnerability during nesting, when female turtles must navigate beaches without clear vision. Underwater, however, they see well enough to find food, avoid obstacles, and presumably recognize other turtles, though their social behavior is minimal compared to mammals or birds. The eyes of sea turtles are protected by a membrane that can cover them underwater, and they produce tears that wash away salt, which is why nesting turtles often appear to be crying, though they are actually just removing excess salt, accumulated in their bodies through specialized glands. Their perception of color remains a subject of research, but evidence suggests they can distinguish colors, perhaps using this ability to identify food or recognize features of their environment. The world they see is mostly blue and green, the colors that dominate ocean waters, with occasional flashes of brighter hues from fish or coral or sunlight filtering from above. They watch their world without expression, their ancient eyes witnessing scenes that change slowly in the ocean's timeless theater. The heart of a sea turtle beats slowly compared to mammals, its rhythm adjusted to the cooler temperature of reptilian blood and the energy-efficient lifestyle that allows these animals to thrive in nutrient-poor open oceans. This slow heartbeat mirrors their slow metabolism, their patient movement through life, never rushing, never frantic, simply persisting with a steadiness that has sustained their lineage through ages of planetary change. The heart has 3 chambers instead of the 4 found in mammals and birds, with some mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, a system less efficient, but adequate for creatures whose activity levels remain relatively low most of the time. When diving deep, the turtle's heart rate drops even further, blood flow redirecting to essential organs, oxygen consumption minimized through physiological adaptations refined over millions of years. This cardiovascular system, combined with other diving adaptations, allows leatherbacks to descend to depths exceeding 4,000 feet, reaching darkness and pressure that would challenge most marine mammals. The slow beat of that hidden heart, protected within its bony shell, marks time in a rhythm older than human civilization. A pulse that connects present turtles to ancestors swimming in Cretaceous seas, the same basic design serving generation after generation after generation. The temperature of the sand where sea turtle eggs incubate determines the sex of the hatchlings, with warmer sand producing more females and cooler sand producing more males. This temperature-dependent sex determination means that climate change could potentially skew sex ratios, creating populations with too few males or too few females to sustain reproduction. The specific temperature ranges vary slightly among species, but generally, eggs incubated above certain threshold temperatures develop into females, while those below develop into males. This system evolved in a world where beach temperatures varied naturally, creating balanced sex ratios across many nesting sites and seasons. In the current warming world, some beaches now produce almost entirely female hatchlings, a skewing that may have significant implications for future populations. The eggs themselves must remain undisturbed in the sand for approximately 2 months, developing slowly in darkness, their sex determined by temperatures they cannot control, their fate decided by the spot their mother chose to dig her nest. This invisible determination, this silent sorting into male and female based on warmth or coolness, represents one of nature's more mysterious mechanisms, a system that works perfectly in stable conditions but becomes vulnerable when conditions change too rapidly. Sea turtles do not have teeth, but instead possess sharp-edged jaws that function like scissors or shears, allowing them to cut through their preferred foods. The edges of these jaws, called tomia, are sometimes serrated and vary in shape depending on the turtle's diet, with jellyfish-eating species having different jaw structures than those that eat hard-shelled prey. Leatherbacks have particularly specialized mouths, with backward-pointing spines lining their throat and esophagus, helping them swallow slippery jellyfish and preventing prey from escaping once caught. These spines, soft and flexible but numerous, create a one-way passage toward the stomach, a biological trap that ensures captured food moves in only one direction. The jaw strength of larger species like loggerheads is impressive despite the absence of teeth. Powerful muscles driving the jaw edges together with force sufficient to crush shells and bones. They eat deliberately, taking their time with each bite, processing food slowly in digestive systems, adapted to extract maximum nutrition from their particular diets. The simplicity of their feeding apparatus, lacking the complex teeth of mammals or the grinding surfaces of herbivorous terrestrial reptiles, speaks to the focused evolution that has fitted each species to its ecological niche with elegant efficiency. Barnacles and other small organisms often attach to sea turtle shells, creating miniature ecosystems that travel with the turtle wherever it goes. These hitchhikers include various species of barnacles, algae, small crustaceans, and sometimes even fish that shelter among the shell's ridges and valleys. The turtle gains nothing from these passengers and may even be slowed by their weight and drag. Yet they persist, colonies growing and reproducing across the living landscape of the turtle's back. Some species of barnacles are found exclusively on sea turtles, having evolved to exploit this mobile substrate, their larvae somehow finding and attaching to turtles in the vastness of the ocean. The accumulation of these organisms can indicate a turtle's health and behavior patterns, with heavily encrusted individuals suggesting time spent in nutrient-rich waters where algae and other growth thrives. Young turtles typically carry fewer hitchhikers than old ones, their faster growth and more frequent shedding of scutes preventing extensive colonization. In this way, each turtle becomes a mobile habitat, supporting a small community of organisms that live and die on the turtle's back, creating a layer of life upon life, complexity nested within complexity, the turtle swimming on, unaware of the tiny worlds it carries through the blue immensity. The nesting behavior of female sea turtles follows patterns so ancient they seem almost ritualistic, behaviors preserved through countless generations with only minor variations. She emerges from the ocean at night, usually during high tide, dragging herself up the beach using her front flippers in a laborious journey that can take over an hour for beaches with significant slopes. She selects a nesting site above the high tide line, then digs a body pit using all 4 flippers, scooping away sand until she has created a depression in which her body fits. Then begins the careful excavation of the egg chamber, using only her rear flippers in precise, controlled movements, scooping sand and depositing it beside the hole, working by feel alone in the darkness. The chamber, shaped like a teardrop or flask, eventually reaches a depth of perhaps 2 feet. And into this cavity she deposits her eggs, usually between 80 and 100 of them, each about the size of a ping-pong ball with a soft, leathery shell. After laying, She covers the chamber carefully, disguising the location by throwing sand in all directions, then returns to the sea. Her journey complete, her maternal duties fulfilled in these few hours of laborious effort on an element foreign to her nature. Sea turtles display remarkable site fidelity, returning to nest on the same beaches where they themselves hatched decades earlier, navigating across thousands of miles of open ocean to reach specific stretches of coastline. This natal homing behavior remains one of the great mysteries of sea turtle biology, the mechanism by which they remember or recognize their birth beach after so many years at sea still not completely understood. The magnetic imprinting hypothesis suggests turtles memorize the magnetic signature of their natal beach during their scramble from nest to ocean, carrying this information throughout their lives and using it decades later when they mature and begin their own reproductive journeys. Some turtles nest on the same beach repeatedly, returning every 2 or 3 years to lay multiple clutches of eggs in a single season. Their fidelity so precise that researchers can predict with reasonable accuracy when and where tagged individuals will appear. This homing instinct, this deep connection to specific places, creates a geography of meaning in the ocean. Invisible lines connecting distant feeding grounds to particular beaches, routes traveled again and again by individual turtles following internal maps written in senses we barely understand. The speed at which sea turtles swim varies by species and circumstances, but most cruise at about 1 to 2 miles per hour when traveling, a pace they can maintain for hours or even days. When frightened or escaping danger, they can sprint at speeds approaching 15 miles per hour for short bursts, their flippers beating rapidly in strokes that blur with speed. Leatherbacks are the fastest swimmers, their streamlined bodies and powerful flippers allowing sustained speeds higher than other species, necessary for their lifestyle of following jellyfish blooms across ocean basins. The steady cruising speed of turtles, while slow by human standards, is perfectly adequate for animals whose lives unfold across decades and whose journeys span entire oceans. There is no rush, no deadline, except those imposed by seasons and biology, and the turtle swims on at its own pace, covering vast distances through simple persistence, the accumulation of miles through days of steady progress. To watch a turtle swim is to observe motion that appears almost effortless, the flippers stroking in rhythm, the body swaying gently, the animal gliding forward through water that offers minimal resistance to its streamlined form, going somewhere or going nowhere, simply swimming because that is what sea turtles do. Sea turtles can dive to impressive depths, with leatherbacks recorded at over 4,000 feet below the surface, descending into darkness where pressure crushes most air-breathing animals and temperature drops to near freezing. These deep dives likely follow concentrations of jellyfish, the leatherback's primary prey, which migrate vertically in the water column following their own food sources. The physiological adaptations that permit such dives include flexible shells that compress slightly under pressure, efficient oxygen storage and use, and tolerance for the buildup of carbon dioxide and lactic acid that would quickly incapacitate mammals. Other sea turtle species typically dive to much shallower depths, perhaps a few hundred feet at most, staying in the upper layers of the ocean where light penetrates and most marine life concentrates. The ability to dive deep or shallow, to access food resources throughout the water column, gives sea turtles an advantage in the competitive ocean environment, allowing them to exploit niches that might otherwise go unused. They ascend and descend through gradients of light and temperature and pressure, crossing boundaries between different ocean layers, experiencing in minutes transitions that would require traveling miles horizontally. Their vertical world as important to them as the horizontal expanses they traverse on their migrations. The lost years refer to the period after sea turtle hatchlings leave their natal beaches and before they return to coastal waters as juveniles, a span of time lasting anywhere from several years to over a decade depending on species. During these mysterious years, young turtles drift with ocean currents, often associated with floating mats of sargassum seaweed that provide food and shelter from predators. They eat small organisms found in the sargassum, grow slowly, survive by luck and adaptation, and gradually develop into juveniles large enough to escape most predators. These years remain poorly understood because the young turtles are difficult to track, too small for satellite tags and too dispersed across vast ocean areas to observe regularly. They simply vanish into the open ocean, carried by currents to unknown destinations, surviving somehow in a pelagic environment that offers both opportunity and danger. The turtles that survive these years eventually return to coastal feeding grounds, transformed from tiny hatchlings into hand-sized juveniles, ready to begin the slower life of feeding and growing toward adulthood. The lost years represent a gap in knowledge, a period when turtles exist beyond human observation, living their lives in the ocean's immensity, part of the great mystery of the sea. Sea turtles have relatively small brains compared to their body size, their intelligence differing fundamentally from the problem-solving abilities of mammals or birds. Yet they navigate precisely across ocean basins, return to specific beaches after decades at sea, find food in environments that appear uniform to human observers, and survive in one of Earth's most challenging environments. This suggests their intelligence is not about abstract reasoning but about specialized adaptations, instincts refined by evolution, and sensory capabilities that allow them to process information humans cannot perceive. They may not learn in the way mammals learn, but they remember, their navigational abilities alone demonstrating information, storage, and retrieval spanning decades. The turtle's mind, such as we can conceive it, processes the world differently than ours, prioritizing different information, responding to stimuli we cannot detect, making decisions based on factors we can only infer. They are intelligent in the way of ancient reptiles, their behavior patterns honed by 100 million years of evolution, successful, not through innovation, but through profound adaptation to their specific ecological niche. To call them simple would be to misunderstand what intelligence means, to impose mammalian standards on creatures whose success suggests their way of processing reality works perfectly well for their purposes. The oldest sea turtle on record lived to be at least 80 years old, though determining exact ages of wild turtles remains difficult, and some individuals likely live even longer. Growth rings in bones and scutes can provide rough age estimates, but these methods are imprecise, leaving the maximum lifespan of sea turtles uncertain. They grow quickly as juveniles, then slow their growth rate dramatically upon reaching adulthood, their metabolism settling into the efficient maintenance mode that characterizes long-lived reptiles. An adult sea turtle, having survived the vulnerable years of youth, may live for many decades, swimming the same migration routes repeatedly, visiting the same feeding grounds year after year, their lives measured in cycles of seasons rather than individual days. They witness changes in the ocean, the slow warming of waters, the gradual degradation of coral reefs, changes too slow for short-lived creatures to perceive, but obvious across a lifetime spanning human generations. The old turtles carry histories in their bodies, scars from shark bites or boat strikes, shells colonized by decades of barnacle growth, their continued existence, a testament to luck and adaptation, and the simple persistence that defines their kind. They swim on, year after year, ancient individuals in an ancient lineage, bridges between past and future, living reminders of continuity in a changing world. Sea turtles communicate very little compared to many marine animals, producing few vocalizations and showing minimal social interaction outside of mating. They do not form pods or herds, do not coordinate hunts or protect each other, spending their lives mostly in solitary wandering through ocean spaces too vast to make social behavior practical. Hatchlings emerging from nests scramble toward the ocean individually, though they move together by accident of timing rather than cooperation. Adult turtles encountering each other at feeding grounds may compete for food or space, but show no signs of recognition or relationship beyond these brief interactions. During mating season, males may follow females persistently, and multiple males sometimes compete for access to a single female. But these interactions are temporary, dissolving as soon as mating concludes. This solitary nature suits their lifestyle. The ocean too large, and food too dispersed, to benefit from the cooperation that characterizes dolphins or whales. They are alone, but perhaps not lonely. Their small brains unlikely to process companionship the way social mammals do, content in their solitude, or at least adapted to it so completely that alternatives seem irrelevant. Each turtle swims its own course, crossing paths with others occasionally, but fundamentally existing as an individual unit, self-contained and self-sufficient, needing others only for reproduction, otherwise complete unto itself. The shells of sea turtles come in various colors and patterns depending on species, ranging from the olive brown of Ridley's to the dramatic tortoiseshell pattern of hawksbills to the smooth black of leatherbacks. These colors provide some camouflage, helping turtles blend into their environment when viewed from above or below, though adult turtles are large enough that they have few predators to hide from. The patterns may also help with thermoregulation, darker shells absorbing more sunlight, lighter shells reflecting it, allowing the turtle to manage its body temperature slightly through the pigmentation of its shell. As turtles age, their shells may become scratched and scarred, accumulating marks from collisions with boats, attacks by sharks, or simple wear from a long life navigating a world full of hard surfaces. These scars tell stories without words, records of encounters survived, dangers escaped, a lifetime written in marks upon living bone. The shell that protects also records, becoming a biographical document of sorts, though only for those who can read the language of scarring and regrowth. Young turtles have cleaner shells, smooth and unscarred, while old individuals bear the marks of their years, their shells testifying to survival, to luck, to the resilience required to live decades in the ocean. Sea turtles produce many offspring but provide no parental care, the mother's only investment being the energy spent traveling to beaches and digging nests and producing eggs. Once she covers the nest and returns to the ocean, her connection to those eggs ends completely, and she never encounters her offspring, who will not hatch for 2 months, and will not return to these beaches for decades if they survive at all. This reproductive strategy, producing many young and investing minimally in each, contrasts sharply with mammals who produce few young and invest heavily in their care. The lack of parental care means each hatchling must survive or die based entirely on luck and genetics, with no learned behaviors passed from parent to offspring, only instincts programmed by evolution. The mortality rate of young turtles is staggering, with perhaps only 1 in 1,000 surviving to adulthood, but those few who make it carry forward the genetic information that allowed them to beat the odds. This strategy has worked for 100 million years, proof that sometimes quantity succeeds where quality fails, that flooding the ocean with young and letting natural selection sort them out remains a viable approach to reproduction for species whose adults live long and face few predators. The mother swims away and never looks back, her reproductive duty fulfilled in those few hours on the beach, her energy conserved for the next nesting season, her offspring left to face the world alone. The front flippers of sea turtles are their primary means of propulsion, beating in powerful strokes that pull the turtle through water with surprising efficiency. These flippers move in a pattern similar to bird wings during flight, creating lift and thrust through changes in angle and speed, the turtle essentially flying underwater rather than swimming in the way fish do. The rear flippers serve mainly for steering and stability, smaller and less powerful than the front ones, held relatively motionless during steady swimming and adjusted only when the turtle needs to change direction. This 4-flippered arrangement, with differentiated function between front and rear, provides both power and maneuverability, allowing turtles to swim efficiently in open water while still able to navigate tight spaces around reefs and rocks. The muscles that power these flippers attach to the inside of the shell, using that bony structure as an anchor point, creating a mechanical system where the turtle's protection also serves as its skeleton for locomotion. They can swim forward easily but cannot swim backward, their streamlined design optimized for forward motion, another example of how evolution shapes creatures to do what they need to do, while ignoring capabilities they will never require. Sea turtles must periodically shed the outer layer of their shell scutes, a process called sloughing that allows for growth and helps remove accumulated barnacles and algae. Unlike the dramatic shell shedding of some terrestrial turtles, sea turtles shed their scutes more gradually, sections peeling away bit by bit, rather than all at once. This shedding serves multiple purposes, clearing away organisms that might slow the turtle's swimming, removing damaged sections of scute, and allowing the underlying shell to grow and expand as the turtle increases in size. Young turtles shed more frequently than adults, their rapid growth requiring more frequent renewal of their outer shell layer. The shed scutes sometimes float to the surface and wash ashore, puzzle pieces of keratin that hint at the turtles swimming offshore. The process of shedding appears to cause no discomfort, the scutes simply loosening and falling away when ready, replaced by new growth from underneath, the turtle's protective layer maintaining itself through constant renewal. Old, giving way to new in cycles, as patient and inevitable as seasons. The hatchlings of sea turtles emerge from their nests, usually at night, when temperatures are cooler and predators less active, scrambling across the sand toward the brightest horizon, which in natural conditions is the ocean reflecting moonlight and starlight. This instinct to move toward light serves them well on undeveloped beaches, but becomes deadly near coastal development, where artificial lights from buildings and streetlights lure hatchlings inland instead of toward the sea. The tiny turtles, each weighing less than an ounce, face a gauntlet of dangers during their scramble to the water, with ghost crabs and seabirds taking many before they even reach the waves. Those that make it into the surf face additional predators, fish gathering in the shallows to feed on the seasonal abundance of hatchlings entering the water. The survivors swim frantically for perhaps 24 hours, distancing themselves from shore and the concentrated predation near beaches, their tiny flippers beating constantly as they head for the open ocean. This frenzy of activity, so different from the measured pace of adult turtles, burns energy reserves stored in the yolk they absorb before hatching, fueling their desperate sprint toward deeper water, where safety increases with distance from land. Most will die during this journey, but those few who make it enter the mysterious lost years, beginning lives that may span decades if fortune favors them. Sea turtles drink seawater and must excrete the excess salt through specialized glands located near their eyes, which produce tears more concentrated in salt than the seawater itself. These glands allow turtles to maintain proper salt balance in their bodies, despite living in an environment where every drink adds salt to their system. The tears flow constantly in nesting females, giving the appearance of crying, though the turtle is simply removing salt accumulated during months at sea. This adaptation is essential for marine reptiles, allowing them to colonize oceanic environments, despite their need for fresh water, solving the problem of salt intake through specialized organs rather than through drinking fresh water like terrestrial animals must. Young turtles produce these salty tears as well, their glands functioning from hatching, prepared for a life in the ocean from their first moments. The efficiency of these salt glands determines how well a turtle can thrive in the ocean, making them one of the key adaptations that enabled the return of reptiles to marine environments after their ancestors left the sea millions of years ago. The tears dry quickly in air, leaving salty deposits around the eyes, but underwater they dissolve immediately. Invisible contributions to the ocean's salinity, one small creature's waste, becoming part of the chemical composition of the sea itself. The leatherback turtle differs from other sea turtles in having a shell covered with thick, rubbery skin rather than hard scutes, a flexible structure that allows it to dive deeper than other species. This shell consists of thousands of tiny bone plates embedded in oily, fatty tissue, creating a structure that can compress under pressure without cracking, an adaptation unique among sea turtles. The flexibility of this shell, combined with other diving adaptations, enables leatherbacks to reach depths where the pressure would crush more rigid structures. The shell's dark color, almost black, helps these turtles absorb heat in cold waters, essential for animals that hunt in the deep ocean where temperatures drop dramatically. The texture of the skin covering the shell is smooth, compared to the hard shells of other species, reducing drag as the turtle swims, making leatherbacks the most streamlined and fastest swimming sea turtles. This unique shell design represents an evolutionary path, different from other sea turtles, a solution to the challenges of life in the open ocean, where deep diving provides access to food resources unavailable to species with rigid shells. The leatherback's shell reminds us that evolution finds multiple solutions to similar problems, that there is no single way to be a sea turtle, only various adaptations to different ecological niches within the vast marine environment. Sea turtles have been observed sleeping underwater, often wedged under coral ledges or rock overhangs, where they can rest protected from currents and predators. These sleeping sites become traditional refuges, individual turtles returning to the same locations repeatedly, creating underwater bedrooms of sorts. During sleep, their breathing slows, and they surface less frequently, entering a state of reduced activity that conserves energy and allows their bodies to rest. Some turtles sleep alone, while others share sleeping sites with multiple individuals. Though this proximity appears to be coincidental rather than social, simply multiple turtles independently choosing safe locations that happen to overlap, the sleeping turtle appears completely relaxed, flippers tucked against its body, head often withdrawn partially into the shell. The picture of reptilian rest in an environment where true stillness is rare. They may sleep for several hours before waking to feed or surface, their sleep patterns governed by factors we don't fully understand, perhaps influenced by tidal cycles or light levels, or simply internal clocks that vary among individuals. The sleeping turtle is vulnerable despite its hard shell, and choosing safe locations becomes essential for survival. Another behavior that must be either learned or instinctual, another piece of knowledge that allows these creatures to thrive in an environment full of hidden dangers. The population of sea turtles worldwide has declined dramatically over the past century due to hunting, egg collection, habitat loss, and accidental capture in fishing gear. Some populations that once numbered in the millions now count only hundreds of nesting females. Genetic diversity lost along with sheer numbers. This decline threatens not just the turtles themselves, but the ecosystems they help maintain, their feeding activities shaping seagrass meadows and coral reefs in ways that affect countless other species. Conservation efforts have helped some populations recover. Protections for nesting beaches and regulations on fishing gear, showing positive results in certain regions. Yet recovery is slow for animals that take decades to reach reproductive maturity, meaning that population increases lag years behind conservation measures, requiring sustained effort and patience. The fate of sea turtles depends entirely on human choices, on our willingness to share beaches and regulate fishing and address climate change, challenges that require global cooperation and long-term commitment. These ancient mariners, survivors of mass extinctions and planetary changes, now face their greatest threat from a single species whose activities have transformed the planet in a geological instant. Their future is uncertain, written not in their genes, but in our collective decisions about what kind of world we want to inhabit, and what we're willing to sacrifice to preserve creatures whose existence predates our own by millions of years. The Arabada phenomenon, observed in certain species of sea turtles, involves mass-synchronized nesting, where thousands of females come ashore simultaneously to lay eggs. This behavior, seen primarily in olive ridley and Kemp's ridley turtles, creates spectacles where beaches become covered with nesting turtles, so many individuals present that they sometimes dig up each other's nests accidentally. The evolutionary advantage of this synchronous nesting may be predator satiation. Overwhelming predators with more eggs and hatchlings than they can possibly consume, ensuring that some offspring survive through sheer abundance. The triggers for Arabadas remain somewhat mysterious, perhaps related to moon phases, or tides or weather patterns, cues that align the reproductive cycles of thousands of individuals across wide areas. On Arabada beaches, the sand becomes churned and disrupted by all the digging, and the air fills with the sounds of flippers scraping and breathing turtles, a scene both chaotic and primal. When the hatchlings emerge weeks later, the beach erupts with tiny turtles, millions of them scrambling toward the ocean in waves that can last days, a flood of new life entering the sea. These mass nesting events represent one of nature's great spectacles, a reminder of the power of synchronized reproduction and the strategies species employ to ensure survival despite heavy predation on vulnerable life stages. Sea turtles can sense the Earth's magnetic field, not just for navigation, but also to determine latitude, reading the angle of magnetic field lines relative to the planet's surface. This magnetic sense provides information equivalent to a compass and also indicates how far north or south the turtle has traveled, creating a coordinate system that works anywhere in the ocean. Young turtles appear to use this sense to stay within specific ocean currents, swimming to maintain their position within favorable water masses that carry them to feeding areas. As they mature, they may refine this ability, learning to recognize magnetic signatures of specific locations, building mental maps that connect distant places across featureless ocean. This navigation system requires no landmarks, no sun or stars, working day or night, deep or shallow, in clear water or murky, a reliable sense that functions regardless of surface conditions. The brain structures that process this magnetic information remain incompletely understood, but their existence demonstrates that turtles perceive aspects of reality invisible to humans, that they read the Earth itself as a navigational aid. This sense, combined with their excellent memory and patience, allows journeys that would be impossible without some form of reliable navigation, giving turtles access to the entire ocean despite their relatively slow swimming speed. The gender ratio of sea turtle hatchlings can become skewed by small changes in sand temperature, with warming beaches producing increasingly female-biased populations. Some beaches now produce over 90% female hatchlings, creating concerns about future breeding success when there may not be enough males to fertilize all the females. This temperature-dependent sex determination evolved in a world where temperatures varied naturally, creating balanced ratios across many beaches and seasons, but rapid climate change may be shifting faster than turtles can adapt. The implications of heavily skewed sex ratios remain uncertain, as male turtles can mate with multiple females and may travel between different feeding areas, potentially servicing larger populations than their numbers suggest. However, if the skewing continues and intensifies, some populations may face reproductive challenges, unable to produce enough offspring to sustain their numbers. This invisible threat, written in the warmth of sand, represents one of the subtle dangers of climate change, affecting species in ways that may not become obvious until populations begin declining. The turtle mothers choosing nesting sites have no way of knowing that their choices determine not just where their eggs develop, but whether those eggs become male or female, the temperature of the sand, making decisions that will shape the population decades into the future. Sea turtles sometimes interact with other marine life in ways that suggest more than simple coexistence, with cleaner fish removing algae and dead skin from turtle shells in relationships that benefit both species. The turtles may seek out cleaning stations, locations where particular species of fish gather to perform this service, allowing the fish to pick at their shells and skin while remaining motionless to facilitate the cleaning. These interactions, though brief, demonstrate a kind of cross-species cooperation. The turtle gaining grooming services it cannot perform itself, the fish gaining food from the parasites and growth it removes. Remoras, the suckerfish that attach to larger animals, often accompany sea turtles, using the turtle as transportation and occasionally feeding on scraps or parasites. The turtle seems to tolerate these hitchhikers, neither welcoming nor rejecting them, simply accepting their presence as part of life in the ocean. These relationships create networks of interdependence, each species playing roles in others' lives, the ocean becoming not just a physical space but a web of connections between creatures whose fates intertwine in ways both obvious and subtle. The turtle swimming through this web affects and is affected by countless other species, From the jellyfish it eats, to the barnacles on its back, to the fish that clean it, each interaction, a thread in the complex tapestry of marine ecosystems. The bones of sea turtles are lighter than those of terrestrial turtles, an adaptation that reduces their weight for swimming while still providing structural support. These lighter bones contain less dense mineral deposits, making them more porous and flexible, allowing the turtle to be neutrally buoyant in water with minimal effort. The shell itself, though appearing solid, contains air spaces between its layers, further reducing overall density, helping the turtle float or sink as needed by adjusting lung volume. This balance of buoyancy allows turtles to rest at any depth without constantly swimming to maintain position. An energy-saving adaptation essential for animals that spend their entire lives in the ocean. The lightness of their bones also makes their skeletons less robust than those of land animals, meaning sea turtles can be injured by impacts that terrestrial turtles might survive, their bodies optimized for a gentle environment where collisions are rare in natural conditions. The evolution of lighter bones represents a trade-off, sacrificing some protection for improved swimming efficiency. Another example of how adaptation shapes creatures to their specific environments, making them perfectly suited for one lifestyle but vulnerable in others. The sea turtle's skeleton is built for water, for floating and gliding, for a life where gravity matters less than buoyancy, where strength comes from streamlining rather than mass. Sea turtles exhibit site fidelity not just for nesting beaches but also for feeding areas, returning to the same foraging grounds year after year throughout their lives. These feeding areas may be located hundreds or thousands of miles from nesting beaches, requiring turtles to migrate between the two locations repeatedly. Individual turtles seem to learn the location and characteristics of these feeding grounds, perhaps during their lost years when they first arrive as juveniles, and then return to these same areas as adults. The fidelity to feeding sites suggests that turtles can recognize and remember specific underwater locations, navigating back to them after years spent elsewhere, another demonstration of their impressive memory and navigational abilities. These feeding grounds often support multiple turtles of the same and different species, all drawn to areas where food is particularly abundant or accessible. The regular presence of turtles in specific locations shapes those ecosystems, their feeding activities maintaining the health of seagrass beds or controlling jellyfish populations, their role as grazers or predators influencing the balance of marine communities. This site fidelity creates patterns of movement that connect distant parts of the ocean, with individual turtles serving as links between separate ecosystems, their migrations transporting nutrients and energy across vast distances. The plastron, the flat underside of a sea turtle's shell, differs between males and females, with males developing slightly concave plastrons that allow them to mount females more easily during mating. This subtle difference, often difficult to see, is one of the few external indicators of sex in sea turtles, as most sexual differences are internal. Males also develop longer, thicker tails than females, housing the reproductive organs, and longer claws on their front flippers, used to grip the female's shell during mating. These differences emerge as turtles mature, taking years to become obvious, meaning that young turtles appear nearly identical regardless of their sex. The concave plastron of males demonstrates how evolution shapes even protected body parts for specific functions, modifying the shell's structure slightly to improve reproductive success. Mating itself occurs in the water, often near the surface, with males pursuing females persistently and sometimes competing with other males for mating opportunities. The act can last several hours, both turtles floating together, after which they separate and may never encounter each other again. Their interaction limited to this brief reproductive coupling. The female stores sperm and can fertilize multiple clutches of eggs from a single mating, meaning males may father offspring laid weeks apart on different beaches, their genes spreading without any further involvement beyond the initial mating. Sea turtles produce pheromones, chemical signals that may help males locate receptive females during breeding season, following trails of scent through the water to find potential mates. These chemical cues, undetectable to humans, create invisible pathways in the ocean, information flowing through water as surely as magnetic fields flow through space. The ability to detect and follow pheromones adds another sense to the turtle's repertoire, another way of gathering information about their environment and the other turtles within it. Females may also use chemical cues to recognize their natal beaches, though this remains speculative, with magnetic navigation still considered the primary mechanism for finding birth beaches. The ocean, which appears uniform to human senses, reveals itself as richly textured when considered from the turtle's perspective, full of chemical signals and magnetic patterns and temperature gradients and sounds, a multi-layered reality that turtles navigate with senses we can barely imagine. They swim through a world of information, constantly processing inputs from multiple sensory systems, integrating this data into decisions about where to swim and what to eat and when to mate, their small brains somehow managing the computational challenges that allow them to thrive in this complex environment. The metabolism of sea turtles varies with water temperature, their activity levels increasing in warmer water and decreasing in cooler water, a characteristic of all reptiles. This means that turtles in tropical waters tend to be more active than those in temperate regions, eating more frequently, swimming more actively, requiring more calories to fuel their faster metabolism. During winter, in temperate zones, some sea turtles become lethargic or enter a state of reduced activity, similar to hibernation, settling into protective areas and remaining there until temperatures rise again. This temperature-dependent metabolism influences migration patterns, with turtles often moving toward warmer waters as seasons change, following temperature gradients that keep them within optimal ranges for their physiology. Leatherbacks, with their large size and special adaptations for temperature regulation, can tolerate cooler waters than other species, allowing them to feed in subarctic waters where jellyfish blooms occur. The link between temperature and metabolism means that climate change affects not just nesting success, but also the basic energy balance of sea turtles. Warmer oceans, potentially forcing turtles to eat more to maintain their bodies, adding stress to populations already facing numerous threats. The turtle's body temperature, and thus its activity level, is determined by the ocean around it, making these animals intimately connected to their environment in ways that warm-blooded creatures are not. Sea turtles have been known to travel across entire ocean basins during their migrations, with some individuals covering over 10,000 miles between feeding and nesting areas. These journeys, undertaken every 2 or 3 years when females are ready to nest, represent some of the longest migrations in the animal kingdom, rivaling the journeys of whales and seabirds. The routes often follow ocean currents that provide assistance, allowing turtles to swim with the flow rather than against it, conserving energy over these immense distances. Satellite tracking has revealed that individual turtles often take similar routes repeatedly, following the same general path year after year, suggesting they learn these routes or follow magnetic cues that guide them along efficient trajectories. The motivations for such long migrations likely relate to historical factors. Turtles nesting on beaches where their ancestors nested millions of years ago, even though those beaches may now be far from current feeding areas. The ocean's geography has changed dramatically since sea turtles first evolved, continents drifting and coastlines shifting, but the turtles' navigational instincts may still direct them toward locations that were optimal in the distant past. These marathon journeys require remarkable endurance, turtles swimming for months with minimal rest, crossing open ocean where food may be scarce and dangers unknown, driven by reproductive imperatives to reach beaches they've never seen but somehow know how to find. The carapace of a sea turtle, the upper part of the shell, shows growth rings in its scutes similar to the growth rings in trees, though these rings are less reliable for determining age. Each ring supposedly represents a period of rapid growth, followed by slower growth, creating visible bands in the keratin. But factors like food availability and temperature complicate the pattern, making age determination imprecise. Scientists instead use bone growth rings and other methods to estimate turtle ages, accepting that exact ages of wild turtles remain uncertain. The scutes themselves, made of keratin like human fingernails, grow continuously from the center outward, adding new material at the edges while the center remains unchanged. This growth pattern creates the geometric designs visible on many turtle shells, each scute divided into sections that expand concentrically. The shell as a whole doesn't grow uniformly, but expands through the growth of individual scutes and the bones underneath. A complex process coordinated across dozens of individual elements to maintain the shell's integrity. Young turtles grow quickly, their shells expanding noticeably year to year, while adults grow so slowly that changes become difficult to detect, their shells reaching maximum size and then simply maintaining themselves through constant renewal and repair. Sea turtles face numerous threats from human activities, including entanglement in fishing gear, ingestion of plastic debris mistaken for food, coastal development that destroys nesting beaches, and boat strikes that injure or kill turtles in the water. These threats have accumulated over the past century as human populations and activities have expanded, creating a gauntlet of dangers that turtles must navigate throughout their lives. Fishing gear, particularly long lines and trawl nets, captures thousands of turtles annually, drowning those that cannot surface to breathe. Plastic bags floating in the ocean resemble jellyfish, leading turtles to consume them, blocking their digestive systems and causing starvation. Coastal lights disorient hatchlings, leading them away from the ocean, while beachfront development destroys nesting habitat and disturbs nesting females. Boat propellers strike turtles that surface to breathe in busy shipping lanes, the impacts often fatal or causing injuries that become infected. These human-caused mortality sources add to natural predation and disease, pushing populations toward extinction in some regions. Conservation efforts aim to reduce these threats through regulations and public education, but implementation remains inconsistent, and illegal activities continue despite protections. The survival of sea turtles depends on humanity's willingness to modify behaviors and accept restrictions on activities that harm turtles. A social and political challenge as much as a biological one. The immune system of sea turtles enables them to survive in an ocean full of pathogens, fighting off infections and healing from injuries that would kill less resilient creatures. Turtles with severe shark bites or propeller wounds often survive and heal, their shells regenerating and scars forming over injuries that would seem fatal. This resilience speaks to robust immune responses and perhaps to the benefits of cold-blooded physiology, which may make their tissues less hospitable to certain pathogens. However, turtles do suffer from diseases, including fibropapillomatosis, a tumor-causing disease that has affected populations worldwide, covering turtles in growths that can interfere with swimming, feeding, and vision. The cause of this disease remains partially understood, with a herpes virus implicated, but environmental factors also playing roles. Turtles also host various parasites, from worms in their digestive systems to leeches on their skin, most of which cause minimal harm in healthy individuals. The relationship between turtle immune systems and the pathogens they face represents a constant evolutionary arms race, both sides adapting to each other, the turtles developing better defenses, while diseases find new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. This dance between host and pathogen plays out invisibly inside every turtle, their body's battlegrounds, where the outcome determines survival or death, health or disease, with implications for entire populations, depending on how these individual battles resolve. Sea turtles can remain active at depths where light barely penetrates, navigating through darkness that would leave humans blind and helpless. Their eyes, adapted for underwater vision, can gather available light efficiently, allowing them to see in conditions that appear completely dark to surface-dwelling observers. They may also rely more heavily on other senses in deep water, using touch through their flippers and shell, detecting vibrations and pressure changes that signal nearby objects or animals. The deep water world, where leatherbacks hunt jellyfish, exists in perpetual twilight or darkness, yet these turtles navigate it successfully, finding prey, and avoiding obstacles despite the absence of visual cues that most animals require. This ability to function in darkness demonstrates the sophistication of their sensory systems, the integration of multiple information sources into a coherent picture of their surroundings. They swim through blackness with confidence, born of adaptations refined over millions of years. Proof that eyes are not the only windows through which animals perceive reality. The darkness holds no terror for them, being simply another environment to which they are adapted, another set of conditions they have learned to exploit. Another demonstration that life finds ways to thrive in virtually every ocean habitat. The satellite tags attached to sea turtles by researchers have revealed migration patterns and behaviors that were previously unknown, transforming our understanding of turtle ecology. These tags transmit location data when the turtle surfaces, creating maps of turtle movements across oceans and between habitats. The data shows that individual turtles often follow consistent routes, returning to the same feeding areas and taking similar paths during migration, suggesting learned behaviors or strong navigational instincts. Tags have also revealed that turtles spend more time in certain areas than others, identifying critical habitats that require protection. The diving behavior, revealed by some tags, which record depth as well as location, shows that different species and individuals have different diving patterns, some making many shallow dives, while others make fewer deep dives. This technology has allowed scientists to track turtles through their lost years, following young turtles as they drift with currents and begin learning their oceanic ranges. However, tagging is stressful for turtles, and not all tagged individuals survive, raising ethical questions about the balance between knowledge gained and harm caused. The information from tags has proven invaluable for conservation, identifying areas where fishing restrictions might protect turtles and revealing connectivity between distant populations, but each tag represents an intervention in a turtle's life. A device attached to a creature that evolved without such burdens. The acoustic environment of the ocean affects sea turtles in ways that are only beginning to be understood, with increasing evidence that turtles can hear and may use sound for navigation or communication. The ocean is not silent but filled with sounds from waves, rain, marine life, and increasingly from human activities like shipping and sonar. Turtles have internal ears without external openings, and their hearing range appears limited compared to marine mammals, but they can detect low-frequency sounds that travel long distances underwater. They may use these sounds to identify nearby land masses, hearing the characteristic sound of waves breaking on beaches from miles offshore, providing navigational information that complements their other senses. The increasing noise pollution in oceans, from ship engines and seismic surveys and military sonar, may interfere with turtles' ability to use sound for navigation, adding another human-caused stressor to their lives. The turtles' acoustic world remains largely unknown to us. Their experience of ocean sounds a mystery. We can only investigate indirectly through controlled experiments and observation. They swim through a soundscape we cannot hear, responding to acoustic cues we cannot perceive. Their ears tuned to frequencies and patterns that matter for their survival but remain outside human sensory range. Sea turtles exhibit what appears to be playful behavior, though interpreting animal play remains contentious among scientists who caution against anthropomorphism. Young turtles have been observed riding ocean currents in ways that seem to serve no obvious purpose beyond the experience itself, surfing waves and currents like otters or dolphins. Adults sometimes interact with floating objects, pushing against them or swimming around them repeatedly, behavior difficult to explain purely through functional benefits. This apparent playfulness, if it truly represents play, suggests that turtle minds have capacity for something beyond pure survival instinct, that they may experience something like enjoyment or curiosity. However, what looks like play to humans might serve purposes we don't understand, exploring behaviors or testing abilities, or simply responding to stimuli in ways that happen to resemble human concepts of play. The question of whether animals play, and what play means for non-human minds, remains philosophically complex. But watching a young turtle apparently enjoying riding a wave, it becomes difficult not to see something familiar. Some echo of joy or pleasure that crosses the boundary between species. Perhaps play is simply what intelligence looks like when survival needs are temporarily met, the mind exercising itself, exploring possibilities, experiencing life beyond mere function. The eyes of sea turtles contain a third eyelid, a transparent membrane called a nictitating membrane that can cover the eye for protection while still allowing vision. This membrane protects the eye from debris, salt, and the physical impact of water during swimming, sliding across the eyeball from the side rather than closing vertically like the main eyelids. The membrane gives the eye a cloudy appearance when extended, visible in close photographs of swimming turtles. This adaptation is common among aquatic animals, providing eye protection while maintaining awareness of surroundings, essential for creatures that cannot afford to be blind, even momentarily, in an environment full of potential dangers. The eyes themselves are relatively large compared to the turtle's head size, suggesting that vision plays an important role in their behavior despite their multiple other senses. The positioning of the eyes, on the sides of the head, rather than front-facing, gives turtles a wide field of view, but limited depth perception, an arrangement that favors detecting predators and food sources over precisely judging distances. Through these ancient eyes, adapted for underwater vision over millions of years, sea turtles observe a world of blue gradients and moving shadows, shape without fine detail, a reality more impressionistic than the sharp-edged visual world humans inhabit. The respiration of sea turtles involves a unique challenge, breathing air while living underwater, requiring them to manage their time at the surface carefully to avoid predators while ensuring adequate oxygen intake. The lungs of sea turtles are large relative to their body size, adapted to store oxygen for extended periods underwater, with efficient gas exchange that extracts maximum oxygen from each breath. When a turtle surfaces, it exhales forcefully, expelling stale air in a distinctive spout that can be seen from a distance, then inhales deeply before diving again. The entire breathing process takes only a few seconds, the turtle minimizing its time at the vulnerable surface. Their ability to remain submerged for hours when resting depends on metabolic slowdown, reducing oxygen consumption to levels that would be unsustainable for warm-blooded animals. During deep dives, their heart rate drops dramatically, blood flow redirected to essential organs, non-essential functions suspended until they return to shallower water. This physiological flexibility, switching between active and resting states, allows sea turtles to exploit both surface and deep water habitats, diving when necessary, but not being confined to shallow depths like some air-breathing marine animals. The turtle's relationship with air is different from ours. Each breath taken consciously, deliberately, never the unconscious rhythm that characterizes mammalian respiration, but a periodic return to the surface, a crossing of the boundary between two worlds. The courtship behavior of male sea turtles involves following females persistently, sometimes for days, waiting for opportunities to mate while fending off competing males. This pursuit can become aggressive, with multiple males sometimes attempting to mate with a single female simultaneously, creating chaotic scenes in the water as they compete for position. The female has limited control over these encounters, her size and strength generally less than the male's, making the mating process more about endurance than choice. Once mating is complete, the male leaves, his parental investment ending with the transfer of sperm, while the female continues to the nesting beach weeks later to deposit eggs fertilized by that encounter. This mating system, where males compete intensely but provide no care, contrasts with the extensive investment females make in producing eggs and traveling to nesting beaches. The asymmetry of parental investment shapes all aspects of sea turtle reproduction, with females bearing nearly all the costs and risks associated with producing offspring. Yet this system has persisted for millions of years, proof that it works despite appearing unbalanced, that evolution cares only about what produces viable offspring, not about fairness or equality in any human sense. The males swim away after mating and may never think about the offspring they've fathered, if thinking is even the right word for whatever processing occurs in their reptilian brains. Sea turtles can survive with significant injuries. Their robust physiology and slow metabolism, allowing them to heal from wounds that would quickly kill more active animals. Turtles missing entire flippers have been observed feeding and swimming, adapting their technique to compensate for the loss. Their determination to survive overcoming what seems like catastrophic disability, those with damaged shells, sections missing from shark attacks or boat strikes, often heal over time, new bone and scute growing to close the gaps, though the scars remain visible throughout the turtle's life. This resilience reflects both their tough construction and their ability to slow their metabolism during recovery, reducing their energy needs while injuries heal. The ocean itself may help healing. The constant bathing in seawater, keeping wounds clean, the salt acting as a mild antiseptic. Not all injured turtles survive, of course, many succumbing to infection or being unable to compete for food or escape predators in their weakened state. But enough survive to show that sea turtles are remarkably durable creatures, capable of enduring trauma and continuing their lives, swimming on despite injuries that have permanently altered their bodies. Each scar tells a story of survival, proof that this individual beat the odds once again, earning another day, another month, another year in the ancient rhythm of their kind. The plasticity of sea turtle behavior, their ability to adjust to changing conditions, helps explain their survival through millions of years of environmental change. Individual turtles show flexibility in their feeding habits, switching prey types when preferred foods become scarce, an adaptability that allows them to survive in variable ocean conditions. Populations have shifted nesting beaches in response to erosion or development, finding new suitable sites when traditional beaches become unavailable. Some turtles have learned to exploit human-created habitats, feeding in harbors or near aquaculture facilities where food concentrates, demonstrating that at least some individuals can adapt to novel situations. This behavioral flexibility complements their physiological adaptations, creating creatures that can respond to both short-term changes and longer-term environmental shifts. However, this plasticity has limits, and rapid human-caused changes may exceed the turtle's capacity to adapt, pushing them beyond the boundaries of their flexibility. The question facing conservation biologists is whether sea turtles can adapt quickly enough to survive the accelerating pace of environmental change, whether their ancient resilience can carry them through the challenges of the Anthropocene. Their survival for 100 million years suggests they are highly adaptable, but the current rate of change is unprecedented in their evolutionary history, testing their limits in ways that have no historical precedent. The cultural significance of sea turtles varies across human societies, with some cultures viewing them as sacred or symbolically important, while others have traditionally hunted them for food and materials. In many Pacific Island cultures, turtles hold spiritual significance, appearing in creation myths and traditional stories, treated with respect and ceremony when hunted. Some cultures believe turtles carry ancient wisdom, their long lives and patient nature symbolizing qualities worth emulating. This reverence has not always prevented hunting, but it often led to sustainable practices, communities taking only what they needed and leaving enough turtles to maintain populations. Modern conservation efforts sometimes conflict with traditional uses, creating tension between biological sustainability and cultural continuity. Indigenous communities that have hunted turtles for generations argue for their right to continue these practices, while conservationists warn that depleted populations cannot support any harvest. Finding balance between respecting cultural traditions and ensuring turtle survival requires nuanced approaches that acknowledge both biological realities and human cultural needs. The sea turtle exists not just as a biological organism but as a cultural symbol, meaning different things to different peoples, carrying significance that goes beyond its ecological role. These multiple meanings shape conservation efforts, making turtle protection not just a scientific challenge, but a cultural and political one as well. The genetics of sea turtle populations reveal patterns of isolation and connection, with distinct populations showing genetic differences that reflect thousands of years of reproductive separation. Female turtles returning to their natal beaches to nest create genetic structure, as offspring from one beach tend to return to that same beach, limiting gene flow between populations. Male turtles, which mate at sea rather than returning to specific beaches, provide some genetic mixing, carrying genes from their natal population to females from other populations. This pattern of female philopatry and male-mediated gene flow creates unique population genetics with more structure on the mitochondrial DNA passed from mothers to offspring than on nuclear DNA, which includes paternal contributions. Genetic studies can identify the natal beach of individual turtles by analyzing their DNA, a tool used to track illegal turtle products back to specific populations. These genetic signatures also reveal historical patterns, showing how populations expanded and contracted as sea levels changed and coastlines shifted over thousands of years. The genes carry history, recording in their sequences the stories of populations separated by geography, reunited by changing conditions, surviving bottlenecks and expansions, adapting to new challenges while maintaining the essential instructions for being a sea turtle. Each individual carries this history in every cell, a living record of its population's journey through time. Sea turtles rely on seagrass meadows and coral reefs as critical habitats, with the health of these ecosystems directly affecting turtle populations. Green sea turtles graze extensively on seagrass, their feeding maintaining the health of these underwater meadows, preventing overgrowth and promoting diverse plant communities. The turtles' grazing stimulates new growth, creating a mosaic of different aged plants that supports greater biodiversity than ungrazed meadows. Coral reefs provide feeding and resting habitat for multiple turtle species, the complex structure offering food sources and protection from predators. The decline of coral reefs worldwide, due to climate change, pollution, and overfishing, removes essential habitat from turtles, forcing them into suboptimal areas or concentrating them in remaining healthy reefs where competition increases. The relationship between turtles and these habitats is reciprocal, turtles depending on healthy ecosystems but also contributing to ecosystem health through their activities. Protecting sea turtles thus requires protecting entire marine ecosystems, ensuring that the habitats they need remain functional and productive. Conservation cannot focus solely on turtles themselves, but must address the broader environmental conditions that determine whether suitable habitat exists for turtles to inhabit. The turtle swimming through a seagrass meadow or over a coral reef is not separate from that environment but part of it, integrated into ecological relationships that define both turtle and habitat. The evolution of sea turtles from terrestrial ancestors occurred over millions of years, limbs gradually transforming into flippers, shells adapting to aquatic life, behaviors shifting from land-based to ocean-based. Fossil evidence shows intermediate forms, turtles that were partly adapted to marine life, but retained some terrestrial characteristics, documenting the transition from land to sea. This evolutionary journey involved countless small changes, each generation slightly better adapted to aquatic existence. Natural selection, favoring traits that improved swimming efficiency, or diving ability, or salt tolerance. The process was gradual, occurring across thousands of generations, changes accumulating until creatures that began as land-dwelling reptiles became the sea turtles we recognize today. This transformation demonstrates evolution's power to reshape body plans dramatically given sufficient time, turning legs into flippers, converting lungs adapted for terrestrial respiration into organs that could support long dives, modifying behavior and physiology until ocean dwelling became not just possible, but optimal. The sea turtles swimming today represent the current point in this evolutionary trajectory, still changing but so slowly that shifts are invisible within human timescales. They carry within their bodies evidence of their terrestrial ancestry, bones arranged in patterns that reveal their origins, adaptations layered over ancestral structures like renovations on ancient buildings. The turtle is both ancient and modern, primitive in some ways but highly specialized in others. Evolution's creation shaped by the ocean over deep time. The nesting season varies by location and species, with turtles in tropical regions often nesting year-round, while those in temperate zones have more restricted seasons, determined by temperature and day length. Peak nesting usually coincides with warmer months, when sand temperatures are suitable for egg development, and hatchlings will emerge into favorable conditions. Female turtles may nest multiple times in a season, returning to the beach every 2 or 3 weeks to lay additional clutches, producing several hundred eggs total before the season ends. This multiple clutching increases reproductive success, spreading the risk across several nests rather than investing everything in a single clutch. The intervals between nesting seasons vary, with most females taking 2 or 3 years between reproductive efforts, using the intervening time to rebuild energy reserves depleted by egg production and migration. Some individuals nest every year, while others wait longer, the variation likely reflecting differences in food availability, individual condition, and perhaps age-related changes in reproductive capacity. The beach becomes a theater of reproduction during nesting season. Sand disturbed by countless digging turtles, tracks crisscrossing each other, nests hidden beneath innocent-looking surfaces. The season passes, turtles return to the ocean, and the beach quiets again, the only evidence of all that activity being the slight depressions where nests were dug and perhaps scattered eggshells from successful hatches. Sea turtles have no parental care beyond the female's nest site selection. Yet this choice profoundly affects offspring survival. A nest placed too close to the water may be washed away by storm tides, while one too far up the beach may subject eggs to lethal temperatures, or make the hatchling's journey to water impossibly long. The ideal site balances these factors, positioned at the right elevation with proper sand composition for temperature regulation and moisture retention. Experienced females may choose better sites than first-time nesters, suggesting learning plays a role despite the lack of opportunities to observe outcomes. The female spends hours assessing potential sites before committing to digging, testing the sand, moving up and down the beach, somehow evaluating factors that determine whether her offspring will live or die. This site selection represents her only maternal behavior, the sum total of care she provides, yet its importance cannot be overstated. Choose well, and 100 hatchlings may reach the ocean. Choose poorly, and none survive. The weight of this decision rests unknowingly on the female as she digs her genetic legacy depending on this moment, on this choice, on factors she evaluates through senses and criteria we can only partially understand. Once the nest is covered and she returns to the ocean, her work is complete, and the eggs face their fate alone, developing in darkness beneath the sand, unprotected but not uncared for, the mother's careful site selection being the only protection she could provide. The phenomenon of cold stunning affects sea turtles in temperate regions, occurring when water temperatures drop rapidly and turtles cannot migrate quickly enough to warmer areas. The cold slows their metabolism to dangerously low levels, eventually causing paralysis and unconsciousness, leaving turtles floating helplessly at the surface where they may wash ashore. Cold-stunned turtles can survive if rescued and gradually warmed, their metabolism resuming as body temperature rises, though some suffer permanent damage from the cold exposure. This phenomenon disproportionately affects juveniles, who may not yet have learned migration patterns or lack the size to survive temperature drops that adults tolerate. Climate change affects cold stunning patterns unpredictably, with some years seeing unusual cold snaps that surprise turtles that have extended their range into warming waters. The rescue and rehabilitation of cold-stunned turtles has become routine in some areas, with volunteers patrolling beaches during cold weather, collecting stunned turtles and transporting them to facilities where they can recover. These individual rescues cannot solve population-level problems, but they save individual turtles and provide opportunities to tag and study animals that would otherwise be difficult to catch. Each rescued turtle, returned to the ocean after warming, continues its life thanks to human intervention, swimming away from the beach where it nearly died, given a second chance through the compassion of strangers who found it in time. The dietary preferences of sea turtles shape their physiology, with species eating different foods, developing different jaw structures, digestive systems, and even shell shapes optimized for their particular niche. Leatherbacks eating jellyfish have weak jaws compared to loggerheads crushing hard-shelled prey, their needs requiring different solutions, evolution shaping each species to its diet. The digestive systems similarly vary, with herbivorous green turtles having longer intestines to process plant material than carnivorous species that eat more easily digestible animal prey. These differences mean species cannot easily switch diets, being too specialized for their particular foods, locked into ecological niches by their adaptations. This specialization makes them vulnerable to changes in prey availability, as species cannot simply switch to alternative foods if their preferred prey disappears. The connection between diet and form runs deep, affecting not just obvious features like jaws, but subtle aspects of metabolism, behavior, and ecology. The turtle-eating jellyfish is fundamentally different from the turtle-eating seagrass, not just in what it eats, but in how its entire body is organized. Two variations on the turtle theme, diverging through millions of years of adaptation to different resources. Their common ancestry remains visible in shared features, but their differences reflect the power of ecological specialization to reshape even closely related species. Sea turtles occasionally hybridize, with different species interbreeding and producing viable offspring, though this occurs rarely in the wild. The offspring of such unions, carrying genes from two species, blur the lines we draw between species categories, demonstrating that these divisions are not absolute. Hybrids have been documented between several species combinations, identified through genetic testing that reveals mixed ancestry. The rarity of hybridization suggests that species remain reproductively isolated through behavioral differences and geographic separation. But the possibility of gene flow between species complicates simple classifications. These hybrids may face challenges if their mixed characteristics are poorly suited to available habitats, intermediate forms that fit no niche perfectly, or they might potentially be more adaptable than pure species, carrying genetic variation that provides advantages under certain conditions. The existence of hybrids reminds us that species boundaries are human constructs, imposed on nature's continuum, useful categories that sometimes fail to capture the messiness of actual biology. The ocean holds secrets in the genes of turtles swimming through it, some carrying traces of hybridization events from years past, their DNA revealing stories of species boundaries crossed in moments of opportunity or confusion. The sensory biology of sea turtles includes specialized cells in their skin that can detect chemical gradients in the water, allowing them to sense prey or perhaps navigate using taste and smell combined. These chemoreceptors provide information about the water's composition, detecting dissolved substances that carry meaning for the turtle's survival. A turtle swimming through the ocean constantly samples its environment chemically, reading invisible messages about food sources, predators, potential mates, or geographic location. This chemical sense adds another layer to the turtle's perception of its environment, creating a richness of experience that humans, with our visual-dominated senses, struggle to imagine. The ocean reveals different information to creatures that taste and smell the water, patterns invisible to eyes but obvious to chemical sensors. The turtle swims through a world we cannot fully perceive, responding to stimuli we cannot detect, making decisions based on information that requires instruments for humans to measure. This reminds us that reality is not singular, but multiple, experienced differently by different species, with different sensory equipment, each animal inhabiting its own perceptual world that overlaps with but differs from the worlds perceived by other species. The turtle's reality includes things we cannot imagine, just as our reality includes things irrelevant to the turtle's existence. The impact of artificial lighting on nesting beaches extends beyond hatchling disorientation to affect nesting females, with bright lights potentially deterring females from coming ashore or causing them to abandon nesting attempts. The natural darkness of beaches has been the context for sea turtle nesting for millions of years, and the recent introduction of artificial lighting represents a change turtles have had no time to adapt to evolutionarily. Some beaches that once hosted thousands of nesting turtles now see dramatically reduced numbers, with development and lighting cited as major factors in the decline. Conservation efforts include beach lighting ordinances that require lights to be shielded or switched to wavelengths less disruptive to turtles, compromises between human safety and turtle conservation. Some communities have embraced turtle-friendly lighting, recognizing the economic and ecological value of maintaining healthy turtle populations, while others resist restrictions on lighting despite evidence of harm. The issue represents a broader challenge of coexistence, finding ways for humans and wildlife to share spaces when our needs and their needs conflict. The darkness that turtles require for successful nesting seems like a small thing to preserve, yet it requires collective action and sustained commitment, people agreeing to live with less light so that turtles can continue behaviors evolved over millions of years. The beach at night, dark and quiet, becomes a space where ancient patterns can still unfold. Females emerging from the ocean to dig and lay and cover and return, the ritual continuing only where darkness remains. Sea turtles occasionally strand on beaches alive, but unable to return to the ocean, victims of injury, illness, or exhaustion that leaves them too weak to swim. These strandings provide opportunities for rescue and rehabilitation, sick or injured turtles receiving veterinary care that may allow them to recover and return to the wild. Rehabilitation facilities around the world care for hundreds of stranded turtles annually, treating everything from boat strike injuries to ingested plastic to disease. The goal is always release, returning recovered turtles to the ocean once they've regained health and strength. Not all stranded turtles survive, some too injured or ill to save despite best efforts. But many do return to the ocean, their lives extended through human intervention. These individual rescues cannot address population-level threats, but they save individuals and provide valuable information about turtle health and threats they face. Each rescued turtle becomes a data point, its injuries or illness revealing patterns that inform conservation strategies. The rehabilitation facilities become arcs of sorts, places where individual lives are valued and protected, where the commitment to turtle conservation becomes tangible in the care provided to each patient. The turtle swimming away from the release site, return to the ocean after weeks or months of care, represents hope that compassion and science together can help reverse the declines caused by human activities. They swim away and we watch, hoping they survive, hoping we've given them a chance at the long life their species is capable of living. The role of sea turtles in marine food webs extends beyond their direct consumption of prey to include the way they transport nutrients between ecosystems. A turtle feeding in the open ocean and then nesting on a beach transports marine nutrients to terrestrial ecosystems, its body and eggs concentrating resources harvested from the sea and depositing them on land. Predators and scavengers that eat turtle eggs or hatchlings or nesting females are accessing marine productivity, benefiting from nutrients that originated in ocean food webs but become available on beaches. This nutrient transport, multiplied across thousands of nesting turtles, represents a significant flow of energy and materials from sea to land. Similarly, when turtles feed in one area but defecate in another, they transport nutrients between marine habitats, their bodies serving as vehicles for nutrient redistribution. These ecological roles, often overlooked because they're indirect, nonetheless contribute to ecosystem function. Turtles connecting different parts of the ocean and linking ocean to land. The complexity of their ecological impact extends far beyond simple predator-prey relationships, encompassing biogeochemical cycles, nutrient transport, and ecosystem engineering through feeding and nesting behaviors. Each turtle swimming through the ocean is not just an individual but a node in a network of ecological interactions. its presence affecting numerous other species and processes, its absence creating ripples that spread through entire ecosystems. The future of sea turtles depends on choices humanity makes regarding climate change, habitat protection, fishing practices, and pollution, with their survival increasingly a reflection of our values and priorities. Current conservation efforts have shown that protection can work, with some populations increasing where threats are reduced, proof that turtles can recover if given the chance. However, maintaining these protections requires sustained commitment, resisting pressures to relax regulations or prioritize short-term economic gains over long-term ecological health. The next few decades will likely determine whether sea turtles persist as viable populations or decline toward extinction, with the window for effective action narrowing as threats intensify. Climate change poses challenges that cannot be addressed through local conservation alone, requiring global cooperation to reduce emissions and slow warming that threatens to fundamentally alter the oceans where turtles live. The fate of these ancient mariners, survivors of mass extinctions and millions of years of environmental change, now rests in human hands, their future determined not by their adaptations or their resilience, but by our willingness to act on their behalf. They cannot speak for themselves, cannot argue for their protection, cannot negotiate compromises, but simply continue swimming through oceans that are changing faster than they can adapt. What happens to them will say something about us, about what we value, about whether we can look beyond immediate self-interest to preserve creatures whose existence enriches the world but provides no direct human benefit beyond the knowledge that they continue. The mystery of sea turtle magnetoreception, the mechanism by which they detect Earth's magnetic field, continues to intrigue researchers seeking to understand how biological systems sense magnetic forces. The leading hypothesis involves magnetite crystals in the turtle's brain, tiny particles of magnetic material that might move or vibrate in response to magnetic fields, triggering neural responses that the brain interprets as directional information. Alternative hypotheses propose quantum effects in special proteins or other exotic mechanisms, but definitive proof remains elusive despite decades of research. Understanding magnetoreception could have applications beyond turtle biology, potentially inspiring new navigation technologies or revealing principles about how nervous systems can detect and process non-visual information. The turtle's ability to read magnetic fields represents one of biology's more elegant solutions to navigation challenges, an invisible sense that seems almost magical, yet is entirely natural, evolved through selection for turtles that could navigate more accurately. Unraveling this mystery requires interdisciplinary collaboration, combining expertise in biology, physics, neuroscience, and mathematics, a puzzle that challenges our understanding of what is possible for biological systems. The turtle swims with secrets still locked in its brain, sensing what we cannot sense through mechanisms we cannot fully explain. Proof that nature's ingenuity exceeds our current understanding. Sea turtles occasionally engage in what might be called basking, floating at the surface with their flippers extended, apparently warming themselves in the sunday. This behavior, observed particularly in certain species and regions, may help them regulate body temperature. The sun's warmth, raising their body temperature above the surrounding water, slightly increasing their metabolic rate. The floating turtle, motionless at the surface with flippers spread, presents a peaceful image, an animal at rest in its element, untroubled and unafraid. These moments of stillness are rare in turtle lives, otherwise characterized by constant motion, swimming and foraging and migrating without much rest. Basking may also simply be rest, the turtle floating rather than swimming to conserve energy, the extended flippers providing stability rather than serving a thermoregulatory function. Whatever the purpose, these surface-dwelling turtles become visible to observers, offering glimpses of animals usually hidden beneath the waves. To see a turtle basking is to witness a moment of vulnerability and peace, the animal trusting the ocean's buoyancy to support it, trusting that this moment of exposure will not attract predators, trusting in the safety that size and hard shells provide. They float like islands, small and temporary, part of the ocean's surface texture, rising and falling with the waves, breathing air that briefly enters their lungs before they dive again into the depths where most of their existence unfolds. The attachment people form to sea turtles, the affection and concern these animals inspire, provides motivation for conservation efforts that might not exist for less charismatic species. There is something about turtles, perhaps their ancient nature, or gentle appearance, or the obvious struggles they face, that engages human empathy and concern. This emotional connection translates into funding for research and protection. Volunteers monitoring beaches, political support for regulations, a social will to conserve that benefits turtles directly. Conservation biologists sometimes speak of flagship species, animals whose protection brings benefits to entire ecosystems. And sea turtles serve this role well, their presence justifying habitat protection that helps countless other less visible species. The emotional dimension of conservation, the feelings people have for animals they care about, remains essential despite attempts to frame conservation purely in terms of ecosystem services or economic values. We protect sea turtles partly because we like them, because they matter to us emotionally, because a world without them seems diminished in some fundamental way. This is not scientific reasoning, but it is human reasoning, and conservation happens or fails based on human choices driven by both logic and emotion. The turtle swimming through the ocean does not know it is loved by people it has never met, does not know that strangers campaign for its protection. But this love nonetheless shapes its chances of survival, creating a strange connection between an ancient reptile and a species that appeared millions of years after turtles first entered the ocean. The biomechanics of sea turtle swimming involve complex interactions between flipper movements, body posture, and water resistance, creating efficient locomotion through a medium 800 times denser than air. The flippers generate thrust through both lift and drag, changing angle of attack throughout each stroke, the turtle adjusting its movements in response to current and desired direction. High-speed video and flow visualization studies reveal the elegance of these movements. Water flowing smoothly over the turtle's streamlined body, vortices shed from the flippers providing additional thrust. The shell, which might seem to create drag, is shaped to minimize resistance, the water flowing over its curved surface without creating turbulence that would slow the turtle. The rear flippers, held mostly motionless during cruising, can be deployed for rapid turns or adjustments, giving the turtle maneuverability despite its size. Young turtles, with different body proportions than adults, swim differently, their strokes faster and less efficient, compensating for smaller size with higher frequency movements. As turtles grow, their swimming becomes more efficient, each stroke producing more forward motion, their bodies growing into shapes optimized for their lifestyle. The turtle swimming through the water demonstrates principles of fluid dynamics evolved rather than engineered. Natural selection, producing designs that rival human engineering in efficiency, despite arising through random mutation and differential survival, rather than conscious planning. The question of whether sea turtles experience pain and suffering matters ethically, and guides decisions about how to treat injured or stranded individuals. The nervous system of reptiles differs from mammals in significant ways, and interpreting their responses to potentially painful stimuli remains challenging without clear behavioral indicators of distress. Turtles certainly respond to harmful stimuli, withdrawing from injury, showing physiological stress responses. But whether this constitutes subjective suffering, similar to mammalian pain, remains debatable. This uncertainty leads some to argue for precautionary approaches, treating turtles as though they experience suffering similar to mammals, providing pain relief during medical procedures, and minimizing their distress. Others maintain that reptilian pain, if it exists, likely differs fundamentally from mammalian pain, being more reflexive than experiential, and that anthropomorphizing turtle responses risks misunderstanding their actual biology. The debate has practical implications for rehabilitation protocols, research ethics, and even fishing regulations. with different conclusions about turtle suffering leading to different recommendations for how humans should interact with them. The turtle caught in a net, or recovering from surgery, cannot tell us what it experiences, cannot report whether it suffers, leaving us to infer from behavior and physiology, always uncertain whether we're perceiving the turtle's experience accurately or projecting our own categories onto fundamentally different minds. And now the turtles fade behind your thoughts. We've drifted through 100 quiet truths about these ancient mariners. From their patient migrations across entire oceans to the magnetic senses that guide them home, from their transformation of marine ecosystems to the delicate scramble of hatchlings toward the waves, you are connected to this world. The same ocean that cradles turtles covers most of your planet. The same moon that pulls their tides pulls yours. The same currents that guide their journeys move through waters you will never see but depend upon nonetheless. The turtles remind us that time moves differently for different creatures, that survival sometimes means changing little across millions of years, that gentleness and patience can carry a species through epochs while more aggressive strategies fail. Tonight, as you rest, sea turtles continue their endless swimming through blue darkness and sunlit shallows, following routes older than human memory, guided by senses we barely understand, toward beaches they have never seen but somehow know. They surface to breathe, dive to feed, migrate across trackless ocean, patient as tides, persistent as currents, living links between the deep past and the uncertain future. And you are safe, warm, resting in a world full of wonder, a world where turtles still swim, still return to ancestral beaches, still carry 100 million years of survival in their slow strokes through the sea. May their patience live in your dreams, their persistence in your heart, their ancient wisdom in your waking. If you're still awake, go ahead and watch the next chapter. Sleep well and dream softly. Good night.